Hi, this is the third video today, which is reviewing the third episode of Dynamite, October 16th, and I had to move the board forward because my light makes it impossible to see. So obviously I have to overcome that. I like using the whiteboard because I don't want to use too much paper. Save the planet, man, seriously. But I think I need to get bigger markers so people can see more clear. But anyway, it is what it is, and it's closer now, so you can actually see what's going on. So if my eyes get cut off or whatever, then it doesn't matter as long as you hear my voice, I guess. Anyway, the SCU versus Best Friends match was supposed to have Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian in the match against Best Friends, but the Lucha Brothers came down and attacked SCU and took out or injured Christopher Daniels. Personally, I think that he hurt himself in training or some shit, and they didn't want to come out and say that because Luchasaurus also got injured in training, and it would make them look bad. So I think they said that he's out of action for a while, and they're going to try to find a way to work it through a storyline, which opens up a possibility for them, but also doesn't make them look so bad with Frankie Kazarian. With Christopher Daniels and Luchasaurus being out from injuries from practice, right? I think that's what happened. But anyway, that's kind of a side tangent. This match here ended up being Scorpio Sky versus Best Friends. And the match was very solid with a lot of power maneuvers. I mean, there was a triple man superplex off the top ropes. That was really, really cool. There was DDTs, multiple dives. There was one dive where the Best Friends, one guy dived through the ropes, and then there was Scorpio Sky standing on the outside with Chuck Taylor, and then Scorpio Sky moved out of the way, and then the two Best Friends landed into each other. Perfect. The thing is, it was one of the best dives I've seen, man, because when he connected to him, he stayed connected until they hit the mat. It wasn't just barely hitting him with his arm or some shit. It was full-on connection, and the connection kept right down to the ground. And then the guy reached over and said, "Shit, man." So that was obviously a huge blunder. But I think it was a blunder on purpose. That wasn't a botch. It was a blunder. There's a difference. That was really cool. The action was pretty evenly balanced. SCU had a number of high impact moves. It was a good match because the high flying, the aerial maneuvers, which is great, high risk, high reward. The bigger the move is, the more people in the arena can see it, right? And the bigger show it is, which makes sense, right? But this match was good because that element didn't overshadow sound technical wrestling. It was a good even balance between the two. In the end, SCU delivered a reverse Razor's Edge into a diamond cutter and pin one half of the Best Friends to win the match, and they advanced on to the next round of the tag team tournament. But it was a great match. It was solid. Not only was there even offense between the two teams throughout, but also the aerial and the high impact and the dives and the flips and the high risk maneuvers as style that AEW incorporates didn't overshadow the sound technical wrestling and power moves of this match. Even that was even as well. It was a great match. It really was a great match. There could have been a little bit more power moves, like a lot of striking and kicking and sending guys running and clotheslining them and stuff, but there could have been a little bit more technical stuff, but still, overall, that was a great match. I'd give that a 7 out of 10, definitely. Oh, Jesus, that looks so bad. I'm going to be doing this. It's got to look better. There. And there was no feud involved with that at all. Not at all. Because both of these teams are faces. They're both faces. Neither one of them are heels. It was a tag tournament. It was a clean win. You gotta have that. You can't have a few coming out of every match you have. It was a good match. This match here is not much to say about it. Alex Reynolds and Johnny Silver, two jobbers. I think they're two jobbers, or maybe they are signed with AEW full time, and they're not intended to be jobbers down the line. But right now, they filled the role of jobbers. It was a squash match. There was not one bit of offense generated by them at all. I mean, Ortiz elbowed Johnny Silver off the apron, and Santana delivered a running baseball kick through the middle ropes to keep him out there, right? Which was great. And then the Inner Circle members, Santana and Ortiz, pulled their double team finisher and got pinned. Nothing really much to say about it. I think this match was just, it was just to put them to 1-0. I think it was just to give them a quick win and fill out the episode. They didn't want to put talking or drama or bullshit into the episode. Instead of doing that, they said, you know what, we can make them have a match and we can give them a win, and these guys can have a match and we can get them exposed. I personally thought that these guys would have been better as singles competitors. You know what I mean? Like we said about that World TV title, which personally I think should be a mid-card title, but whatever. I think these guys would be better as single competitors. They really didn't come off as a tag team to me. But there's not much to say about that. That was just a quick filler match. 5 out of 10. It would have been more, but 100% of the offense was from Santana and Ortiz. There was literally not one move pulled off by Alex Reynolds and or Johnny Silver on Santana and or Ortiz. So that was a squash match. It meant to be filler. It also meant to give these guys a win, basically. That's simple serve match. Now, the Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Express was originally supposed to have Luchasaurus involved, but he didn't end up getting involved. He apparently tore his hamstring during practice, so he was not in this match. They had Marco Stunt in there instead, and I don't know, man. Like, I think Marco Stunt is a bit too small for AEW, in my opinion. Like, Rey Mysterio is 5'6", 175 pounds with solid muscle. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 5'10". He's only 4 inches. Rey Mysterio's only 4 inches shorter than me, and even Rey Mysterio had to fight to get the respect he deserves. And Marco Stunt is like 100 pounds and 5'2". You know what I mean? Like, but that's just my own worthless opinion, and I'm sure that people are going to hate me, and I'm sure that whatever. Anyway, Marco Stunt took Luchasaurus' place because Luchasaurus was injured in the match of Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Express. And before we continue, this was a tag tournament. This was a tag tournament match. As was this. This was a tag tournament. That was a tag tournament match. And I had Marco Stunt replacing Luchasaurus with Jungle Boy against Lucha Brothers. Now, the match was actually evenly... Okay, I got the order screwed up. Whatever. We're still gonna talk about this now, because the way the order was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Whatever. This is what we're talking about now. It was arguably the best tag match of the first 3 episodes, believe it or not. And I know it sounds crazy for me to say that when you have SCU versus Best Friends. I mean, when you had a Private Party versus the Private Party versus the Young Bucks. Like, I know Hangman Page and Dustin Rhodes against Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and then somebody's going to stand there and say, you're saying Jurassic Express with Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy against Lucha Brothers was arguably the best. What the hell is wrong with you? It's true, man. It's true. Like, what I just said about Marco Stunt not belonging where he is, I felt that, but upon watching this match, I kind of feel differently. Like, he actually delivered a number of hard hits, like Hurricane Ranos, and kicked out of a few pins, and did it running strikes and knees and stuff like that. And there was one point where he ran all he could and bounced off the ropes, and then came back and jumped through the ropes and landed on Pentagon Jr. And Pentagon Jr. tried to stay up. I don't think he was meant to fall back, but he did. And he fell right back onto the ramp with Marco Stunt on top of him. So that little spot there was, I think that, I don't know if it was supposed to happen or not, but it was important because it showed that Marco Stunt could take a big guy like Pentagon Jr. down, because Pentagon Jr. is not a small guy. And it was good. It was very good. Stunt was assisted by Jungle Boy. They set up a couple of double team moves, which included an assisted lifting inverted splash, where Jungle Boy was like this and had his hands like that. No, Marco Stunt was, and then Jungle Boy was here and grabbed his hands and then flipped them up, and Marco Stunt landed on one of the Lucha Brothers. So went for the pin. Obviously, he didn't win, which was great. But then they kind of lost steam. They did. I mean, they struggled a bit here and there after that. But the Jurassic Express started losing steam because they don't have nearly as much experience as what Rey Mysterio, as what Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix have combined. And the Lucha Brothers are much bigger and they're tougher. And eventually, they just basically outlasted their opponents in terms of endurance. And in the end, Lucha Brothers started toying with Jurassic Express. And they ended up getting, the Lucha Brothers hit their finisher on Stunt and won the match after toying with them for a while. It started off really, really good. Surprisingly good. Most of the offense from Jurassic Express came from Marco Stunt. And the things that Jungle Boy was involved in was usually assisting Marco Stunt. And then Jungle Boy was doing like a few run and jumps off the ring apron at one of the Lucha Brothers, Rey Fenix, I believe. And like he might have did a couple of strikes and elbows and like drop kicks and stuff like that. But for the most part, he was assisting Marco Stunt, where Marco Stunt was doing the offense. I actually think that Marco Stunt changed my mind quite a bit. Because the thing about wrestling is that it's a suspension of reality. To me, I think the thing about professional wrestling is that it allows you to be able to sit back and say, wouldn't it be cool if... I know it couldn't happen, but I can still dream. It would be cool if we saw this or if we saw that. Professional wrestling makes it possible. And you gotta have fun with it. You gotta have fun with professional wrestling. You gotta just sit back, enjoy the show. You know what I mean? You can't hold everything to 100% absolute reality. Like, it's just the way it is. You know what I mean? You gotta have fun with it. This match was really good. I would give it more. I would probably give it like... I would give it like an 8 or 9 out of 10. The reason why it's only getting a 7 out of 10 is because all of the offense came from Marco Stunt. And none of it came from... Hardly any of it came from Jungle Boy. And there was no feuds. Not at all. I think the Lucha Brothers are going for heels. When the Lucha Brothers attacked Christopher Daniels and took them out, I think that was them officially saying, okay, these guys are heels. They're supposed to be hated. So usually when there's a heel, there's a feud. But in this match, I think they're focusing on a feud. They weren't focusing on Jurassic Express, really. Although there could be a feud coming, because Lucha Brothers called Marco Stunt Baby and Babysaurus, and Pentagon Jr. was almost ready to walk out on the match and stuff like that, not giving Jungle Boy any respect. So actually, we're going to put a question mark here. Is a feud possible? I don't know if a feud is possible or not. Maybe it is. I could see it happening, actually. But it would have to involve Stunt. Stunt would have to be there because he was the one insulted. Luchasaurus, if he stays in the tag division, which he shouldn't. The dinosaur. He can be what he wants, but being in the tag division is stupid. They need big guys in the singles division, but whatever. It could be Luchasaurus coming to defend his little friend, so to speak, right? And or Jungle Boy can stay tagged with Stunt, which is what I think they should do. And anyway, but either way, however this feud goes forward, whichever two of the three Jurassic Express members teams together to go against Lucha Brothers, if this does become a feud, one of those two would have to be Stunt. He has to be involved because he was the one being insulted and everything. So that's a possible feud. Rio versus Britt Baker. You know, when I first saw this match, I thought that Rio was terrible, and I thought she was fighting against Britt Baker, and like certain spots where you can tell, okay, this is the move that's supposed to be done. It's just the way it happens. It's the way the transition goes into it. It's the way it leads up. It's how it would almost be weird if it had to go another way, right? You're like, that match, that move totally should have happened there. Sometimes you get those moments where you know it's supposed to happen, man. There's a few moments like that where it seemed like she was totally struggling against it, and that might have been the case. But it wasn't nearly as bad as what I thought it was the second time I went back and watched it. It was surprisingly even. They both exchanged elbows to the face, fisherman suplexes, and roll-up pins. Rio scored a diving double foot stomp on Baker. Baker executed a crossroads and applied a lockjaw finisher towards the end, which she didn't manage to keep on, and then Rio managed to get a rope break a couple of times. But in the very end, Britt Baker kept going for that lockjaw, and the way she applies it looks like Pac's brutalizer, but instead of having the hands like around the head with the arms going back like that and twisting the head at a weird angle like Pac does, Baker has the arms still locked between her arms and her legs, but then she goes around and she basically does the mandible claw with it, which is a cool move. It actually looks really cool. I like Britt Baker's submission is my favorite of today, definitely. She went to apply it, but of course Rio managed to squirm around and roll Baker over and pin. And then Britt Baker pinned, and then Rio won, which was stupid. It was, to me, is stupid. Like the thing about I've seen people have the sharpshooter applied to them, and then they manage to reverse it and get Bret Hart or whoever's doing the sharpshooter would end up having it reverse on them. They would be putting the sharpshooter. Figure four, roll it over. You know what I mean? I've seen submissions reversed on other people before, yes, but it was the first time I've seen like a submission being applied, locked in, happening, and then the person being submitted rolls the other person over and pins them. Like, you're getting pinned. You wouldn't try to keep submitting the other person. You only have 3 seconds. I just found that a weird ending. I didn't like the way it ended. I didn't think that roll up in the middle of a submission was realistic. But it's just one thing. I mean, that's not a reason to fail a match or complain about it, you know. I mean, you knew that Rio wasn't going to lose the women. This I should actually put this for women's title. Now, you knew Rio wasn't going to lose the women's title 2 weeks after getting it. You know what I mean? I knew that wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to have a title defense before their first pay-per-view after the episode started. Like, that was plain as day. So you knew Rio was going to win. But there was a couple of moments where she looked like she might not. It was very surprising. It was a good women's match. There's not much more to say about it. I give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely. That was actually a surprisingly good match. Hangman Page versus Hangman Page and Kenny Omega versus Pac and Jon Moxley. This was a storyline match. These two guys are faces. They're both members of the Elite. They're obviously not going to have a problem with each other. Not yet, anyway. It was the tension between these two. It was a tension between those two. And in the end, Moxley, he hit. Well, no, Moxley got really frustrated and irritated that he couldn't get the victory out of Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. Like, because up to that point, it was very evenly matched. I mean, there was a couple of double team spots that really impressed. You know what I mean? That like when Hangman Page followed up with running shooting star press that ended in a 2 count. I mean, Kenny planted Pac on his back, and then Hangman Page did that, and it was great chemistry. It was similar chemistry that I saw between Hangman Page and Dustin that happened here with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. That was really great. Hangman Page did a moonsault off the top ropes, and he crashed into everybody and landed on his feet. There was another part of the match where Hangman Page was, I think he went for another moonsault, but he was pushed off the top rope, and he fell against the side of the ring and fell onto the floor. Man, oh man, it looked like he landed on the corner of the ring the same way as Darby Allin did in Fyter Fest. I mean, now, this wasn't as bad because Darby Allin actually deliberately leaped. I mean, this time here, Hangman Page was pushed off and he kind of rolled over and landed. It wasn't the same, velocity or air to the middle part between the two ring posts. But still, it looked like a freaking hurt, man. That took him out for a little while. But it was even between the two teams. They were elbowing and they were punching and they were sending each other crashing into the barricades and stuff like that. There's a couple of power moves, definitely some dives in there at each other. It was really an entertaining match, actually. Led me to believe that either one of those two teams could be a tag team championship contending match in the future. But John Moxley got really frustrated that he couldn't get the win, so he went down and got these barbed wire covered bats. And of course, Pac hasn't lost in North America in over 2 years, and of course, he didn't want to lose. So when John Moxley went into the match with the barbed wire bat, he said that Pac said to John Moxley, no, don't. He grabbed it and he threw it out the ring. He's like, use your head. Then John Moxley got pissed off and gave him the fingers and paradigm shifted him. And then, of course, that's when Hangman Page and Kenny Omega beat the crap out of Pac and won because, of course, Pac just had a finisher done to him and his partner left and it was 2-on-1. And I don't think Pac cares about that at all. I don't. It's like I mentioned in my last video, Pac will try to win any match he's involved in, but I don't think he gives a shit about tag team championships. I mean, if he'll do it, if he's told to do it, obviously. But if he had a choice, I don't think he would care about tag team titles at all. I doubt that very much. But that was obviously a feud match. That was obviously to create a feud. You know what I mean? And of course, what I like to call this was a storyline match. It happened to create the storyline. Because as soon as John Moxley hit the paradigm shift on Pac, I knew they were going to have a match against each other. And then as soon as that match was done, they announced that match. That's where the storytelling in the ring comes from, which I agree with. I would rather have them have a match and tell stories in it. Even if the match ends in a DQ, or if the match doesn't end up finishing, it's still something that I would rather see than freaking stupid ass soap opera stuff all the time. And it's not like it's a singles match that would make a difference in terms of the win or the loss on that person's record. It's a tag match between two teams that will probably never going to go for the tag team belts together, or not damn near anytime soon, right? So it's a match that doesn't really matter that ended the way it did. It was for the storyline. It was to create the feud between Pac and John Moxley. But it was a good match. The power dives evenly balanced throughout the two teams. I give that an 8 out of 10. I really do. But man, this episode was dominated by tag matches. I mean, you got a tag match there. You got a tag match there, you got a tag match there, you got a tag match there. That was a good singles match, Rio versus Britt Baker. And the last one, Chris Jericho and Darby Allin. Ugh. I'm going to tell you the score right now. We're actually going to start off with the score. Three out of 10. 3 out of 10. That's what I give that match. I mean, Darby Allin started out strong, punching and kicking, and he tackled Chris Jericho to the mat, knocked Chris Jericho over the ring, and dove out at him, and he was like just wailing on him, on Jericho's face and stuff, and head, and Jericho had his arms up trying to protect himself. So he had some offense off the start, but he couldn't keep it up against the veteran Jericho, and Jericho eventually rolled him over and elbowed him and basically took him down, and then shoved Darby Allin. Darby Allin was like lying down, and then the steel barricade was like here, and the fans were here, and this was a ramp, so he was pushed underneath it like this. And then Chris Jericho grabbed his legs and did a catapult, and it bent Darby Allin at a weird angle. It looked like it hurt, actually. And then after that, Chris Jericho just started beating up on Darby Allin, and and then he tied Darby Allin's hands behind his back shortly after that, and then Darby Allin's hands was tied behind his back the whole damn match. And as soon as that happened, I checked out. I watched it, I observed it, but when I say I checked out, I mean I stopped having any hope of it being a good match, because then it was just Darby Allin getting his ass kicked again. Darby Allin managed to knock Chris Jericho down in the ring when they got back in the ring, and he kept climbing up onto the top. Well, I mean, he dove out the ring at Chris Jericho a couple of times. Then when they went back in the ring, Darby Allin somehow managed to knock Chris Jericho down with both his hands tied behind his back, and he jumped on the top rope, and I think he landed a coffin drop, and then he went for a second one. Jake Hager came down and pushed Darby Allin off the top ropes, and Darby Allin landed on the mat, and then Chris Jericho... you know what I mean? Jericho just picked up the win after that. He just did his finisher and picked up the win. But that match, to me, it sucked. It was just Darby Allin started out strong, got his ass kicked, and then had his hands tied behind his back. And as soon as he kept doing those dives and shit with his hand and coffin drops with his hands tied behind his back, it wasn't a good match. It wasn't effort. It wasn't something that could happen. It wasn't even something that a person would think about wanting to see. It was just such a blatant effort to get Darby Allin over, to try to sell his toughness, to sell how great he was. Like, look at him. He could fight with both hands tied behind his back. Like, I don't know. I didn't buy it at all. It's 3 out of 10. This episode was, I don't know, man. I give this episode like 6 out of 10. A reluctant or a weak 6 out of 10. I don't do 0.5s. I don't do this 0.5 or that 0.5. No, I don't. I give it 6 out of 10. It was nothing but tag matches except for it was nothing but tag matches except for 2. The Rio and Britt Baker match was actually really good. So far, when it comes to the singles competition, I actually think I prefer the women's singles matches over the men's singles matches so far. Although that's starting to change because we're starting to see more technical wrestling involved rather than just jumps and flips and super kicks. They've given the super kick a break, which is good. But anyway, this was a great match. This match sucked horribly. This was just a storyline match. Didn't mean anything. It was just to create the storyline and create that feud and set up their match against each other for October 23rd. And only one feud and one possible feud comes out of it. So I give it a 6 out of 10. It's not really a must-see match. To be honest with you. if you don't really care too much about tag team wrestling, you know what I mean, or if you like it but you don't really care about the tag matches that don't mean much, like if you're more of a person who only cares about the number one contendership or fighting for the title, which is what I am, to be honest with you, those are the only times I want to watch a tag match. And if that's the case, then you don't need to watch this episode at all. It wasn't that great. It was kind of crappy, actually. To me, the only match on the whole night that was any good was the Rio and Britt Baker match. That was a great match. It was decent, but it was a tag. I'm sorry, call me what you want. It was a freaking tag match. Same thing with this. This was a squash match, obviously made just to give Santana and Ortiz a win under their belt. That's all it was doing, plain as day. Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Express. That was actually a surprisingly good match. But again, like, it only gets a 7 out of 10 because all the offense from Jurassic Express came from Marco Stunt. You know what I mean? And it was done in a way it was believable. It wasn't. They didn't do it in a way it was blatantly just being done to sell Marco Stunt. And it's a couple of maybe one or two moments like that, but mostly it was totally looked good to me. But still, it's a tag match, you know. And then this was the good match, and then a throwaway tag match for the story, just to create a storyline and a feud there. You know what I mean? Now apparently Hangman Page wants to avenge his loss against Pac as well. So is that going to be a 3-way feud? We don't know. Is that going to be a 3-way feud? This is a F. I don't know. This is a question mark. I don't know. I think so because Hangman Page said in a interview that you could see online. I don't know if it was being elite or just an episode. Just hold on. But I think there's like a possible 3-way match going to happen. I think we're going to see Hangman Page, Pac, and Jon Moxley in a 3-way coming up for Full Gear. That's what I think about that, man.